Hi there, my name is Brady. I took second place at the LCS 3v3 over the weekend. My teammates were Paul Cooper and Trey Massengale. I just wanted to do a little more of a long form deck profile, something that you're not really able to do on another person's channel like Bortle, for example. I really felt like this would be the best way to answer all the questions I've been receiving about the deck, and gonna go from there. I am going to start by stating I will not be posting my replays. I know a lot of people have been asking me for them. I just could not be fucked to do that. I don't have the time to commentate the matches either. This is pretty much the extent you're going to get from this deck. Unfortunately, I do apologize. It's just I don't have time. Don't really want to do it either. Okay, so this is going to be a little longer. You may want to strap in, grab yourself a drink or something, find somewhere comfortable to sit. So let's try to get into this, and hopefully I won't put you to sleep. Okay, so we're going to start with the zoos. Or actually, I'll start with why I played the deck, rather than going into the deck profile first. So I chose to play specifically this disgusting pile over Drytron or Virtual World, specifically because I felt like control decks were better going second than combo decks. And what I mean by that is Virtual World opens typically something along the lines of Herald plus Vanity's Ruler or some combination of Fucho. It really depends on the list. But I just felt like that was pretty impossible to beat playing combo unless I opened multiple hand traps. And then against Virtual World, they open a pretty also oppressive opening of Chuchi plus VFD. Once again, as a combo player, I just do not want to have to be fucked to answer that. That's too many hand traps to deal with, and it's not going to help my combos. So I felt like a control deck was the next best step. That has the ability to play virtually every game, which is something I've learned to really value out of a control deck like this. Okay, so let's get into the deck profile now. I will go over why I played the deck the way I did, and I'll go over the ratios as well. So for the zoos, 1 Thoroughblade, 1 Bunny Blast, and 1 Whiptail. And then I played 3 Tenki and 1 Barrage. So you'll notice this is quite a lot smaller. A lot of the engines in this deck are quite a lot smaller than what you would normally see in the deck. First thing, this is for space. But second thing, I really wanted to use my nerd brain to attempt to optimize the numbers down to as low as they can go so I can still draw them, but also have a cohesive engine. This 7 count right here is the best odds to draw 1 copy specifically in your opening hand going first. I don't want to have a deck that's going to see multiple zoos in every turn. In fact, that is the worst hands in this deck you can typically get, is multiple zoo cards with no defense. So I felt like that was something a lot of zoo decks were doing subconsciously. So yeah, we minimized the engine down to really its bare basics and where it needed to be. Bunny Blast is just overall the best Zood card to have, in my opinion. It's good versus Virtual World. It helps set up follow-ups. This card is awesome. Whiptail is pretty generic against a lot of matchups. It's also an Outrage Dragoon, which this deck doesn't necessarily have a whole lot of. I felt like this was just something I had to play. And then Thoroughblade was the best one that made drawing multiples viable. So yeah, if I ever saw multiples, this would at least get me to, hopefully, some kind of a trap card, most likely, to start protecting myself with. You'll notice in the side deck, too, I play 2 copies of Ram Ram. There's 2 reasons for this. So going second, I will typically side in copies of Ram Ram against decks that Zeus is good against. Now, this could be something like trap decks. This could be something... I tend to bring this in versus... what is it called? Dogmatika. Excuse me. Dogmatika decks as well. Yeah, this card was good in the side. I actually kind of liked it. And how I would side it in is I would bring in the 2 copies of this. And if I was not going to be siding out trap cards, for example, say I'm bringing this in versus a trap matchup, I would side out Whiptail and Thoroughblade, just leave my zoo count the exact same and have 2 Ram Ram. Now, if I'm doing something like going second, I tend to side out all of my Eldlich traps, and I'll get into why I do that here in a moment, but that's usually a good place to fit those in. I can also side out other trap cards that need be in bringing this in for a more aggressive going second as well. But yeah, I really liked how the zoo ratio functioned. I think, honestly, it was kind of correct to have it like this for this tournament. But I'll always evaluate it for the future and see how it goes from there. So next we have the Eldlich engine. So we have Golden Lord, 3 Cursed Eldland, 3 Sanguine, 2 Conquistador, and 1 Hakero. Once again, the core is extremely minimized, and I'll go into why I side these out here. So Elixirs and Golden Lands are generally not good cards going second. A lot of times you'll find yourself not wanting these cards. You'll be wanting more cards like Torrential Tribute, Strike, Dogmatika cards, and Zoodiac cards. They're just overall a little bit stronger going second. However, I will say Lord and Cursed Eldland are great cards going second in this deck. And honestly, if we just had more copies of these, like Cursed Eldland specifically, we would be in a really good spot. We wouldn't have to really worry too much about these cards. But yeah, these cards are great going second. We only play 1 Lord because it's terrible going first. So if we need Lord, we have 4 copies of it with Cursed Eldland when we need it, 1 copy when we don't. Same goes for these cards. We have 6 copies of Conquistador when we need it, 4 copies of Wakero when we need it. Yeah, and then siding out. Typically, I side out all 6 of these going second, and I would bring in Lord plus a combination of hand traps. Or if the second Lord was not necessary in the matchup, I would just bring in 6 hand traps. That was typically what I was going for with this. Okay, so next is the Dogmatika package. 1 Ecclesia, 1 Maximus, 3 Nadir Servant, 2 Punishment, 1 Aerial, and 1 Schism. I'm including these into the Dogmatika package because really the only way you can access these 2 cards is through Dogmatika cards. Now, the reason we decided to play Dogmatika over, like anything, like more hand traps, more trap cards, is because these cards can search either a Cycle Reader in the form of Aerial, or they can search Winda, which I felt like was really the most useful when we were grinding. Gave us a lot more of a blowout. Originally, I was only playing Aerial, but I noticed as soon as you add the second Should All card, it kind of improves consistency a little bit because you can now, Nadir Servant, dump your App Cologne, search 1, and pitch the other, which is actually pretty useful, I've found. That also automatically sets up your Winda too, so you don't have to worry about summoning Maximus to set up your Winda. Maximus is pretty important in this deck. I think he's kind of the focal point of the deck. You really find a lot of advantage just being generated through Maximus, dump Titanclad, Construct, pick up your Schism out of the graveyard. That's pretty much like an FTK versus both Drytron and Virtual World if they don't have the Kinglong. So yeah, we just try to maximize the amount of advantage we can get off of like single cards in this deck a lot of times. Ecclesia can also get you to Schism as well if you have a card in your extra deck in the graveyard. So you can go Ecclesia, search Maximus, banish, and then we can dump both App Cologne and Construct to pick up the cards that we need to just get ourselves going. And then Punishment. So this card is a self-FTK. I'm sure you've watched the finals if you're watching this. But I Punishment his monster. I believe it was a Ram, and I got really quite literally punished for it because I wasn't able to summon it out of my extra deck to beat him. And that's just kind of a problem with this card, and maybe one of the reasons why the Dogmatika engine could potentially come out in the future. But at the moment right now, Maximus is just really strong. The more Maximus we see as well, the weaker this strategy kind of gets. But you can still do plays with the Maximus and ensure that you're not going to, get blown out. So, for example, if you open just Nadir Servant, you can go Nadir Servant, dump App Cologne, pitch and search one of these cards. I typically do Schism if I'm just going first, so I'll search and pitch Schism. Summon Maximus by banishing the App Cologne. And then we can use Maximus's effect here, sending both Titanclad and Construct. This is a Dark and a Shadal, so perfect for a Winda. But then we get the follow-up through Ecclesia at the end phase, and we get a Winda because we're going to pick that back up with Construct. This is a pretty good combo. It does lose to quite a bit of hand traps in the format, so you have to really be careful here, but it just seemed to work out for this tournament. It went pretty unopposed into a lot of hand traps, but also there's just so much bait. You've got Tenki, Barrage, Eldland. You can even bait some hand traps with your Chakanines and your Zoo Engine, so you can do like a play where you're trying to recur your Bunny Blast for the follow-up, They're going to bell you here, so perfect. I'm going to use Nadir Servant now, get myself a win for your trouble. Yeah, so you just want to be careful how you use your resources in this deck. It can be pretty risky at times. Okay, for the hand traps, we're playing 3 Droll Lockbird, 3 Ash Blossom, and 3 Ghost Bell. So these are the most generic hand traps. I feel like they have the most overlap versus both Virtual World and Drytron, which I felt like was going to be the most important going through the tournament. They were by far the most represented decks, clearly. So I wanted to make sure that I was able to beat those decks going first or second. These cards are also fantastic together in multiples. So if I open Droll plus Ash, Droll plus Bell, Ash plus Bell, whatever it may be, Bell plus these cards, all 3 of them are fantastic together. And that's also going to have overlap in the side deck. Cycle Reader, Nib, and Lancia are all good in combination with these cards. 2 of them are almost guaranteed to make your opponent pass turn every time in these matchups. That's perfect. If we see 2 hand traps with this many in, it's really where we want to be. 2 Torrential, 2 Strike, or 3 Torrential, 3 Strike, excuse me. These cards are, in my opinion, the best generic traps. This card is extremely valuable versus Virtual World, but also it's valuable versus Drytron now because we have stuff like Aerial. Aerial plus Torrential, say Punishment plus Torrential, whatever that access may be, is really just virtually impossible for Drytron to deal with. You can also Torrential and then flip Schism to lock the follow-up on them up pretty hard, which I found was really good. This card overperformed quite a lot. And then Torrential is like one of the best cards you can establish with your turn 1. And it's also good going second. Torrential and Strike are the best 2 trap cards, in my opinion, to draw going second because they're useful at breaking boards. So Virtual World and Drytron are making... so the Virtual World specifically is going to be making Ultimateness or Perfection in some builds, which I guess whatever. And then they can make like the Megaliths, and then they can... Which the Megalith build you just can't really beat going first. I mean, you just have to open hand traps, unfortunately. That's just how the matchup works. But in the standard Drytron, they're either making like Ruler, Ultimateness, they can make Fucho, they can make all kinds of different cards. These are just the best 2 cards to see at any point in the game against Drytron or Virtual World. They're good. Against Virtual World, they're going to be making VFD Chuche a lot of times. Once again, these cards just have fantastic overlap for those boards. They're also good versus Rogue, which is good. So these cards will definitely stay in the deck. They overperform quite a bit. Okay, so I'm going to do the side deck, and I'm going to talk once again about the overlap here. We bring in this specifically for Drytron, we bring in this for Virtual World, and this goes in for both. Now the side pattern I will bring back up here is we're going to side all of these trap cards out. Against Virtual World, we're going to bring in 3 Cycle Reader and 3 Nib. Against Drytron, we're going to bring in 3 Nib, 2 Lancia, and Duster. We chose Duster over something like Cosmic Cyclone, just because this is a higher impact card and has overlap versus Rogue. We're already banishing cards out of the graveyard with stuff like Aerial, so I just didn't really see the point in playing something like Cosmic. I wanted a higher impact card. Honestly, looking back, this card should be cut, the second Lord, and we could bring in the third Lancia there. That would also give me the option to side a full 6 into Virtual World that are all hand traps, and giving me 15 hand traps for the matchup, which is just perfect odds to see combinations of 2 all the time, which is really what we want. Combinations of 2 plus a starter. Game 2 going second. Game 1, though, a lot of times we're going to be bringing in just Judgment. This card is really good at just protecting the board. It also plays around Duster, and if you're familiar with playing in heavy storm formats, you'll know you just always have to assume they have it. So this card lets you be a lot more greedy. It lets you get a lot more aggressive when you're setting your trap cards. So yeah, we play it. It's really good. And then the last card in my side deck, 2 copies of Ram. Now I went over how we will bring these in going second, and then we can also side these out versus trap decks. So I'm not going to touch on this too much, but this card is pretty good. I really liked how it felt in the side deck, and I would recommend trying it if you're going to be going for a smaller Zoo engine. Okay, so for the extra 1 Zeus, Omega recycles it back, and because this extra deck is so tight, I don't really think we have the room for the second. So the one was just fine. I did recycle it a couple times to use it, but it's just not a very common play. Also, pretty important, I said this in Bordel's deck profile, remember, if something on your field gets destroyed by battle or card effect, you can always just slap Intis under him, so you have a much more threatening Zeus than what you had prior. Cool. That's all you need to know about Zeus. That card's broken. Dryden, one Borbo. We only play the one because it's only good going second. So a lot of people go Zoo, Kong, Dryden, or if they're not playing Kong, they go Zoo, Boar, Dryden. Instead, I'm just going Zoo, and then I make either Chakanine or Tiger Mortar. Typically Chakanine, because this is the better one to have in Graveyard, and then I go Dryden. And then 2 Tiger Mortar, 2 Chakanine. This is the best one for grinding, because it can set up, when you have a Tiger Mortar in grave, it can set up so many more plays. And then this card is also really good because it recycles your Bunny Blast, so you constantly have access to Zoos. Link Spider and Asa. This is, I'm sure a lot of people who play Zoo Eldlich are familiar with this, but this is just how you access Zoo cards using Golden Lands. While we do have a restricted amount of them, they come up quite a lot because you quite frequently will still draw singular Golden Lands without Sanguine, just part of the deck. You have to play it, in my opinion. Omega, a fantastic card. In the extra deck, you use it to recycle all of the extra deck cards that you can't play multiples of. You can recycle the App Cologne, so you can keep reusing the Aerial. App Cologne actually says from the hand or graveyard, you can, or hand or deck to pick it up. So you can Omega back App Cologne, and then pick up your Aerial out of your graveyard and resend it to use its effect. Very relevant, and I think this kind of solves the whole Shadal problem of not having a fusion spell, because now you're able to either access a fusion spell or a Shadal at any point with this card. Entis, I just explained why this card is good with the Zeus, but you also just need this for Dogmatika. And then I just explained the App Clone. Construct we play, it's a card that you can summon off of Schism that can dump Aerial from decks in rare scenarios, but it's pretty important because typically if you go Nadir Servant, send App Clone to search the Schism, you don't have any other extra deck monsters, so you need a second Shadal monster to be able to dump out of your extra deck. And it also can pick back up your Schism in case you like the rest of your hand as well in your combo. Window, this is our win condition for the deck. And Titanclad, this is our dark monster that we're sending off of Maximus. It's kind of underwhelming because there's not a whole lot of Dogmatika cards to take advantage of, but I don't think there's really a better dark monster to play, at least that I'm aware of at the current moment. So yeah, that's why we played that card. And that is the deck. Once again, I'm not going to be posting replays. I'm so sorry. It's just not going to happen. I just don't have the time nor the energy for that. I hope this clarified quite a bit up for you guys and made it a lot easier.